So looking at the list of people who are present, I have John Mingus, Steve Severn, Frank Tranfa, John Bacon, Christy Sawert, George Thompson, Dave Tornquist, and myself. Is there anybody else from the commission who's joined yet? Looks like Justin just joined. Nancy will not be here tonight. So while we're waiting, giving people a few more minutes to log in, I'll just remind the commissioners, if you have not done so already, please take a look at the minutes from January. I'm missing 4 people. Megan, did you hear from anybody else besides Nancy that they would not be able to attend?
No, she was the only one I heard from.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get going. So welcome everybody to the Sports Commission's February meeting 2021. As a reminder to everyone present, tonight starts the new practice the county is exercising, that commission meetings will be recorded. So just bear that in mind. We have a couple of guests from the public here tonight. It looks like I see Mark Lincoln and Greg Jimenez are joining us from the public. Although Mark, you might be joining us as in your official capacity as the liaison from Park and Rec. So
that's correct.
That is correct. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're not strictly.
Yeah, and Steve Finna and I swapped.
Right.
So.
I don't think I told the commission that was going to happen. So everybody, Mark Lincoln is now our official liaison from the Park and Rec Commission. Turning to the minutes, so in terms of like tonight's meeting, I usually kind of do a quick recap. It's not a super packed meeting, although it's going to be a lot of information. So we're going to get a presentation from DPR about the FY22 budget. We're going to have member reports. I'm putting those a little higher up on the agenda, and we have plenty of time for them. We're then going to get two more presentations from DPR, one about Jenny Dean and one about the Reed School. And then we'll do a little bit of commission business towards the end. So in terms of the minutes, did anybody have any changes that they wanted to make? Megan, I do have a couple of editorials. I normally do have a few editorials. You have sent me the file. And so, typically my editorials are not substantive. They are, punctuation, preferences, generally things of that nature. So, and that's about what I have for this set of minutes, are just some minor punctuation and wording preferences, but nothing substantive. So I would entertain a motion from the group to adopt the January minutes as presented, with some leeway to the chair to make editorial revisions, minor editorial revisions.
So
it was moved by one of the Johns, John Bacon, seconded by Steve Severn.
yes.
Okay. So I think rather than do a person by person vote, I'm going to try a voice vote tonight. So everyone in favor of adopting the minutes under those circumstances, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions, please so signify. All right, so we will adopt the minutes and I'll get those edits to you just as soon as I can, Megan. So our first presentation is by Megan about DPR's FY22 budget.
Right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Is it a okay size?
It's fine.
Yep.
Okay. I have it on my second screen. So this is not an official presentation. In all past years, we've had our director and our finance staff come to commission meetings to present. Obviously, this year presented challenges, and also in addition to the not meeting in person, the meetings are very close. So our staff has developed a presentation that I can walk through. I may not be able to speak to everything like our finance office or our director can, but anything we have questions on that I can't answer, I would be happy to get back with you guys in the next day. Right. Okay, I'm
Megan, do you
gonna,
want people to ask questions as you go, or would you rather have us hold the questions till the end?
we can ask questions as I go. I think the presentation is short enough.
Okay.
That, hold on, I'm going to switch screens.
Okay. So commissioners, let's do it this way. This is Megan's first time running a virtual meeting, so we're gonna try to be very coordinated for her. If you have a question while she's presenting, please use your raise hand function, and I will let her know that you have a question if she doesn't see it on her own screen.
Okay. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Where is proposed operating? Where is it?
I see it has 14 pages.
Yeah, it's not. If it's not loading properly.
We'd like looking at your kids.
Thanks. All right, here we go.
There you go.
So 2022 budget. Here's where we are in the process. We've submitted the proposed budget to the managers meeting, and we're in the period now where we are waiting to have our public hearing. The budget has been submitted to the county manager's office for feedback. In March, we will have our March or early April, I believe ours is scheduled in March. We'll have our public hearing with the county board. This is just some background on the DPR lines of business. And when we look at our budget, looking at where might cuts be or additions be to our budget. So our ASDT team, that's basically our admin team. It's our director's office, our finance office, marketing and human resources, our planning, development and design team. That's our smallest team. Those are the people that lead things like the POPs and all of the park plans. Our PNR division, those are the individuals that maintain all of the outdoor spaces, including the urban forestry, and they have the relationship with Virginia Cooperative Extension and the farmers markets. The Athletic and Facility Services Division, that's the one that you all would know really well, that runs a lot of the sports programs, manages the field allocations and all indoor space allocations, and manages all of the community centers. Our Community Recreation Division, they run all programs associated with non-contract summer camps, so DPR summer camps. They run the teen program, the senior programs, the therapeutic recreation programs, youth and family recreation, and early childhood, to include preschool. And then we have what we call supplemental programs, and these are a lot of our class programs, are what we refer to as Enjoy Arlington, and our competitive team programs. This is just an overview of our budget. So we are having a budget increase this year. And then our revenue. Now, our revenue is with, before someone asks, their revenue, we are making some assumptions about the state of the world in FY22. We're not assuming a complete lockdown. We're not running anything. We're assuming a more business-like normal setting when you look at revenue.
And I take note, Megan, if you would go back one slide, that, oh, you can go forward. The third bullet, the main driver of the increase in FY22 is distribution of 2.43 million from Boeing's 10 million for Longbridge.
Mm-hmm.
And George has his hand up.
Yeah, is that a planned distribution, or is this more being done on a contingency basis? You know, in other words, did you plan to dip into that 10 million donation? Or is this more in to fill a gap that might not have been there?
So unfortunately, I am going to have to ask about the specifics of the Boeing. I'm not super familiar with that. I do believe it was planned with the opening of the facility, but I'm not 100% positive. So let me get back to you on that one.
Okay, thanks.
But I do believe it. My guess is that it's tied with the opening of the Aquatic Center in FY22, but I will take a note of that and get back to the commission.
Megan, you're absolutely right about that. That's in the detailed budget that was all allocated for Long Bridge opening.
Okay. And here's a list of the proposed budget increases. These are the 2 new facilities that we will be opening with a plan to open sometime this coming summer, which would be after July 1st, which is the flip over of our fiscal year.
Right. So I did get a briefing from Jane week or so ago, and these were 2 things I was particularly interested in because as the commission may remember, they were slated to be opened in 2020. And those got, when the budget got redone shortly after it was presented because of the COVID expected downfall in COVID revenues from COVID, these 2 facilities were mothballed, or not mothballed really, but the opening of the facilities was postponed. And so I was very interested to know whether or not that was going to continue on. And I'm really happy to see that it's not going to continue, that they're going to go ahead and move forward and open them.
All right. Also, as part of those, we will open our first full-time, full-day preschool. That's starting in fall of 2021, and some conversion of temp staff to permanent FTEs. Okay. The capital impacts to operating, a lot of this, when they say keep up with capital improvements, when we add new parks and new facilities, we have to add the maintenance, the O&M to keep up with them, such as landscaping and mowing and such. Okay. Proposed reductions. As you all are aware, we were going to have to take reductions this year. I'll let you go ahead and read the slide. A lot of these are the cutting of our temp FTE staff. Almost all of these individuals have not been working since the initial shutdown last March.
Yeah, so just for some context here, and I wish I had my notes with me, but they're not nearby. When I met with Jane, she noted that there's a $10 million shortfall in the budget this year. And DPR is absorbing 1.4 million in cuts. So DPR is, while DPR is getting a bit of an increase, they are still taking cuts over what they had. I think, I don't know how that works out actually, Megan, how you can be getting an increase and a decrease at the same time. But in terms of the shortfall, DPR is making up a big chunk of it. So, and I think what Megan is showing us here, I think Jane said a lot of those cuts are coming from the elimination of FTE positions.
They're all temporary positions. There are no full-time positions that have been eliminated. And a lot of this is the reduction of community center operating hours.
Right.
Okay. Additional temp FTE reductions in the Parks and Natural Resources in the CR division. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention the potential. So I was asking Jane, of these reductions, which are the ones that might be felt by people in the sports world, and she cited the reduction in the PNR staff because some of those temporary staff would have been involved in doing some park and field maintenance, and so that was the only one that she could point to that what might actually directly affect the folks that we are, our issues and the folks that we represent.
And then we are currently in a hiring freeze, and these are some of the positions that DPR expects to remain frozen that are already vacant.
Steve has a question.
Yeah, the the freeze on the DPR program manager is that Robin Leonard's position?
No, that is not Robin Leonard's position. That is in that's in our administrative services division.
Oh, yes.
So it's not a position that works in either of any of the program outward facing.
So are you planning to replace Robin?
What's that?
Are you going to replace Robin Leonard's position?
I do. They will replace Robin's position very shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, Jane said that they have been able to fill positions throughout this time period, but these two are being held as vacancies. Rob, I'm sorry, Megan, did you want to just touch the bottom of that slide?
Oh, yeah. Reduced contribution to nonprofits, the elimination of the VC trust, and the funding for Virginia Cooperative Extension. And then the capital maintenance program. This is just to provide everyone a list of where funding is coming for those programs.
So I'm going to guess, Megan, if I ask you whether or not I know that there was a one-year CIP last year, whether this puts us back on track with what would have been a longer-term CIP, or anything is left out of this. Because I did not get a CIP update from Jane, so I didn't have a chance to ask that question.
Yeah, we're still, I believe we're still working on the CIP budget.
Okay.
So I will ask our finance office on that one. That is not public yet. So then the next steps is our meeting with work session with the county board is March 16th. And the public hearings are April 6th and April 8th.
Steve, your hand is still up. Did you still have a question, or did you just?
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but
that's okay.
On Alcova Heights, where do I find out where phase 2, what's planned for phase 2 of Alcova Heights? Is that on the website?
I'll find out tomorrow for you, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Again, we didn't have the formal presentation this year, but if you have any questions or you think of anything tonight or any time in the next week or so, I'm happy to get back with more information for you.
Okay, so we are supposed to go to the work session. I've talked with John Mingus about joining me there just so that he can see how they go, and maybe even make our presentation. So would like to spend a little bit of time just hearing from folks. I mean, I know this is, not as robust of a presentation as we've gotten in the past. We appreciate Megan, being here to walk us through what the county made available. My takeaway was that a couple of things. First of all, that, DPR is taking a big chunk of the, making up a big chunk of the needed reductions. That seems to me to be kind of keeping with the theme that often, those kinds of things. I mean, DPR has had years where it did very well, and I'm not saying that it's doing poorly this year, but it just did seem to be a little heavy-handed in terms of what DPR was being asked to contribute. Jane felt that the bulk of it is elimination of these positions, and she felt pretty strongly that these were cuts that they could make without impacting service. But I do take note that, some of those cuts are with respect to maintenance crews, and those of you who've been on the commission before for a longer period of time, myself included, remember 10, 11 years ago when cuts were needed and the maintenance budget was zeroed out. And so there's a theme here that it's troubling to me. And I just wondered if the group, we have to provide some kind of input to the county, and I don't know whether, we want to provide some requests or suggestions for some changes. So Steve?
Yeah, just in line with that, the DPR budget represents 4% of the entire county budget, 4%. And there's a $10 million shortfall, and yet DPR is asked to make up 10% of that. And you're right, this just seems intrinsically wrong, but that's all.
Right. I mean, so, but if we say that, then I feel like it's incumbent upon us to make some suggestions for what we'd like to see be restored back into the budget. John?
Actually, Justin's hand was up first.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't looking down. Justin, go ahead.
John's being too fair, but I appreciate it. I guess it's sort of a two-sided thing. Obviously, we're told maintenance, we won't see the effects of the reductions with respect to maintenance. I don't know if there's a way to get assurances or whatever on that. And the particular reason for concern, obviously there's the history you mentioned, but there's a couple of big shiny things that are going to be opening up this summer. And, is that going to inadvertently divert some attention from a bunch of other stuff within DPR? And particularly on top of the cuts to the temporary maintenance staff, is maintenance just going to go down the tubes at times because of it? I mean, I would think that would sort of be natural. So I don't know if that's something that happens within the budget hearings or if that's more a direct plea to DPR, but that might be something to, concern to raise.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's all of the maintenance, maintenance for facilities like Longbridge and Lover Run are the same crew that do the park and this PNR reduction. I don't know enough about it to opine on that, but it's a good question to raise. So then John Mingus.
Actually, do you think there were?
You might be muted.
There, is that better?
Yep.
Sorry, it's on the headset.
No problem.
So I think the maintenance is a key piece, but also the it's a non-trivial is the refuse removal, sort of how that gets covered. Because if you think about these park spaces that are heavily used, those trash cans are pretty full at the end of a weekend. And if anything sort of affects that pickup, it could be problematic. I mean, I know one of the issues that we run into, or that soccer has noticed, is the complaints from the neighbor about the trash cans. So anyway, that's it.
Okay. Good suggestion. George?
Question, are the maintenance cuts coming after last year was maintenance significantly pared back, particularly on fields, because one, they weren't being used, at least in the spring, and two, certainly not at the volumes that they have been used in the past. Probably, arguably, the fall seemed to be fairly normal, and actually quite a bit of use from the diamond fields. But I'm wondering if it's kind of a double whammy here, where we have a period of cutbacks and maintenance, for obvious reasons, in combination with now fiscal reason cutbacks.
So I can speak a little bit to that. So the temp staff reduction for PNR are temp staff that were cut when the pandemic started. So then the PNR was able to get a couple temp staff back to do some watering and maintenance over the summer. So the level of service, so there's been no one cut since then. So the level of maintenance that we had in the fall should be consistent going forward.
John, did you have your hand up again?
No, not on purpose.
Okay. Okay. So I think what what I've been writing down, since it's hard for Megan to present and answer questions at the same time and take notes, written down some questions that we have. I think what we'll do is I can coordinate with Megan tomorrow and make sure that we got them all, put those forward as questions to DPR, and along with some of the CIP questions, and ask that they respond to us in time for us to formulate some input. Sorry. Into the budget process and budget hearing on the 16th. Steve Severn.
I have another one to add. I noticed
Chatty Cathy tonight.
in the detailed budget, they are talking about reducing the number of hours in the community centers.
Yes.
And I was curious about when that would be in terms of hours. Particularly interested, at nighttime when we have meetings. And those are the main place, the community centers, and where we have all our meetings. Is the time going to be restricted in the evening, or is it, do you know at this point?
So our community centers are already incredibly scaled back due to the pandemic. So you can see in let me flip the slides here. We're taking a one-time reduction of 400,000 because we are running our community centers at an extremely limited basis, just some fitness centers. I think it's like 5 centers that are open. We are not doing any rentals of any meeting rooms at the moment.
Yep.
When we do plan to start open up for rentals for meeting and such, there will be reduced hours, but we will still have evening hours at like the Fairlingtons and the Langstons and everything. So it shouldn't be too impactful to your meetings. What might happen is a certain center may be closed on a certain day that used to be open 6-7 days a week. We may now have a closure once a week.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everybody Steve, thank you for your very detailed review of the budget. I didn't sit down and read it myself because I'd gotten the briefing, but I think that there's probably some value in sitting down and reading it. So I will probably try to do that. I think we have some material that we can use to make some comments at the budget hearing from the commission perspective about, the amount of this DPR taking on the amount of the shortfall that it is, and some things that we think could be restored if the county manager and the board were so inclined to do so. So I may reach out to a couple of you just for some assistance on this, but I don't want to say that just yet. So if I reach out to you, please be helpful. Anything else on this? Anybody? Okay. Okay, we're going to move on then to commission member reports. The first one is the PSMP post-implementation update. I think that there was an update from Nancy in the packet, and since Nancy's not here, we aren't going to go through that line by line. Megan, did you want to give an update during this time about the feedback survey? And you're on mute if you're trying to talk to us.
Let me, I'll pull that up. So this was as of noon today, and it closed at the end of the day. So there might be a few more, but here is the results so far of the field engagement survey. So about 900. Clearly, most of the people were in the drop-in use comments. I did look at a little bit of the demographics, and the demographics were heavily in the middle adult category. So it did look like it was a lot of the, I would guess, youth sports parents. And then the results of the number of responses. And you can go online and see some of the comments.
So I know DPR was concerned that initially but there weren't a lot of commenters. Are you pleased with where this came out?
In talking with Pete, he was happy with the number of responses. Yes. I think we've heard concerns about the tool that was used. It was a little cumbersome and a little clunky. So that's something to think about in the future. I thought it was fancy, but it was multi-stepped.
Right.
But Pete was happy with what we got.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly how we did it is something to think about in the future.
Okay. John has his hand up.
John, you're on mute.
Sorry, comment on the tool. The tool was pretty intimidating, and even when I reached out to try to get some people to do it, their response was, they have to watch a long video, and the tool is complicated. Nobody's going to do it. So they did not get it. It's fully pushed to the community to the soccer community as I had hoped. But so the tool was definitely could be seen as a problem.
Yeah.
John, I will second that. I saw the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, when we learned that, Pete was still concerned about the numbers of responses, I spent a large part of a Saturday putting together a 2-pager to advise to Little League folks the things that we were interested in and guide them through the document so that we could have some prayer of people being willing to, with a kind of this is what Little League thinks about the survey, please share our opinion or your own opinion, but this is kind of just to try to guide people through. So we did also got, and I shared with Pete, some pretty pointed feedback about the tool. So I think that DPR has heard over and over that was maybe not it was something had to be tried because you can't have in-person engagement during a pandemic. But I do think that there's some possibility that the tool itself may have depressed responses. Justin?
Yeah, whether it's the tool or different sort of expectations, I think a lot of people were expecting to have a survey that they would provide their feedback through. And instead, what they got really was an online version of a community engagement process, which I think very few people were really interested in submitting themselves to or even were ready for, hence the confusion we heard. So some of it was just a billing or labeling kind of thing. But my guess is in general, you could always offer the community engagement version, but the vast majority of people would prefer to have something a little shorter and sharper where they can provide feedback and then get out of here.
Right. Yep. So Megan, do you have any idea? I know the results are going to go, will DPR be compiling results and providing them to the implementation committee?
Yes, and that's supposed to happen in April and May would be the next step in the implementation committee.
Okay, so I guess if anybody from the commission wants to get a sense of what was said, we should go and look at the tool online and kind of look at the responses there. But other than that, probably just wait until we hear more from the PSMP.
I can see tomorrow if there's some way for our staff to get a download summary of what was responded to send ahead.
Okay. I think that would be interesting. It'd be interesting to know what kind of input the PSMP is getting. So next member report is Aquatics Committee update. Christy, I think you had something for Megan to pull up, right?
Yeah. So Aquatics Committee had our last meeting February 16th, 2021. I think I've mentioned in previous meetings that we've been working on the PIP and policy revision for Arlington Public Schools pools. That is currently before the school board, and my understanding is that it will be voted on in March. For the APS update, this is what you're seeing on your screen is the most recent operations update. You can see since July to January, the pools have been very popular. There's very low no-show, and there's quite a bit of rescheduling, but Helena said that once they post open spots, that they're rescheduled almost immediately. So they've had great success with keeping the pools open during this COVID time.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is that we started in our last meeting to discuss budget. And even though we didn't have any budget numbers at that time, because I think APS's budget like just dropped today. Some people in APS schools want to consider, as Long Bridge opens up in the summer, the ability for APS to have more control over the pools and have their own revenue generating classes. And the way that might look right now is that maybe DPR does all of their aquatics classes at Longbridge, and then all the aquatics classes that DPR currently runs in APS schools would be run instead by APS. And so we had a brief discussion about that. We didn't come to any conclusions about it. Our chair, we are going to invite, I think our DPR liaison was out last meeting, but we're going to have a lot more discussions about it, and also I think more formal presentations by both DPR and APS to see where this may go and whether Aquatics Committee has an opinion on it. But I wanted to let everybody know, just in the interest of, you know, sharing these ideas early on between the commission and the committee. And then another thing we talked about is the possibility of putting together a county-based summer swim team, because right now it seems like the swim teams in Arlington are based on private pools, and we were hoping to start to get some way of having a swim team where you could join just based on living in the county. And so that's another thing we discussed. If you have any questions, let me know.
Christy, I've heard before the idea of APS running classes. I guess I'm wondering, was there discussion about, you know, what kind of distinction would be made between a DPR class and an APS class? How would that appear to the user who maybe, you know, isn't so understanding of the differences between the county and the pool schools? They may not see that break.
So the way I understand it, and again, this was very early on discussions before the entire committee, so there weren't like formal presentations. But the way I would understand it is, if you wanted to take, for instance, if you take Toddler and Me swim class, if you went to the DPR site and you wanted to register for that, then you would be taking the class at Longbridge. But if you wanted to take a class like at Yorktown, you would go to the APS would have its own site where it would, for instance, right now, well, not right now because of COVID, but before COVID, APS was running, they would have a few camps. They had a spring break camp, swimming camps, spring break camp. They also had a summer camp, aquatics camp. So the same way you register for those camps through APS, you would register for them through APS's system. I mean, there's a lot of things that would have to, a lot of changes that would have to be made, obviously. But there is some discussion about, you know, DPR's aquatics classes being at Longbridge, and then APS having their own aquatics classes, running their own classes in the APS pools.
I mean, at first blush, it would seem to me to be confusing, but I've never tried to register it for pool classes before, so I don't know. Do you know though whether are there any other examples of other jurisdictions where that kind of model exists? Like I know Fairfax County has a lot of pools. I don't know whether they, I forget why I was looking at their website, but I was looking at their website for some reason, their websites for some reason. And I had the impression that maybe they do have pool by pool registration systems like the one that you're talking about. Have you guys looked into that at all to see if there's a model out there where this is practiced?
So Helena is, because somebody asked about like, well, what would you charge and things like that. And Helena did say basically they're looking at surrounding jurisdictions
Mm-hmm.
and to see, I mean, I don't want to misspeak. I don't think it would be pool by pool. It would be more like if you want to take an Arlington County class, a class that comes out, you know how you get your magazine every quarter?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't call it a magazine, you would call it like a paper.
Flyer or something.
Flyers. Well, for instance, I get the one that's the DPR classes or Recreate Arlington. And then you would have, so you get that, and then you also get one for summer camps. So you would know, like looking at that flyer, if you want to register for like a DPR at Longbridge, you would register like according to DPR. And then if you wanted to take an APS class, you would register through APS. I mean, I know we've talked, I guess DPR now is going to require like all their summer camps to be registered through them. I mean, like, summer before last, well, even last summer, even though the camps didn't go through. For instance, last summer, I registered my kids for different camps. Some of the camps you would register through DPR, but in other camps, it would say like, go to kidrealm.com and register by blah, blah, blah date, or registration opens blah, blah, blah date. So I could see it would be very similar to that. I mean, as a parent, I'm, you know, you look at the information for the camp or the class, you see where it is, and then you see how you register. So I don't think it's that unusual even in Arlington. I think I might have been the most outspoken against registration all through DPR, because as somebody who's like got up at 7 a.m. trying to get my kid into gymnastics or whatever, like, and then all the classes were gone by like 7:05. I prefer different registration systems for different camps or classes instead of all going through DPR, but you know, that was me. Maybe you can take that down because I can't see anybody and I don't know if anybody's rolling their eyes at me or.
I don't think anybody's rolling their eyes.
Okay.
Well, you know, this is, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention early because, you know, I think that's a better position to be in to allow us to think about it and engage with you guys on it. You know, I think it would be, we'll have to kind of think about what thoughts we have on a bifurcated, you know, swimming system in the county, because that is completely within our jurisdiction, including the pools. So I think it is definitely a topic for this commission to discuss, but that's not something for our agenda tonight. So we'll have to talk about how to kind of explore that topic at another time. But I appreciate you bringing it to our attention early, Christy. Does anybody have any questions for Christy? Otherwise, we can move on to the Park and Rec Commission update. Okay, so Drew, I think you're on the phone?
I am.
Or in the call?
You should see me.
Yep.
So the Livability 22202 did a presentation, just a brief outline on things they're working on. And of course, Virginia Highlands was one of them. And it was a little interesting. They phrased the reference to the softball fields as community activation of the softball fields. So, and at one point, so Carol Fuller was giving this part of the presentation. I think she's the president of the Crystal City Civic Association. She said that she hoped that the county would consider scheduling community events at the same priority as softball games, which is very different than saying, I hope that we get rid of the softball fields. So I don't know if the strategy has changed or the messaging has changed. I would note that in all of the images, the kind of mock-ups of what their dream Virginia Highlands Park would look like, which they did include in this presentation, it did have the softball fields there. But then there were some references to future public engagement about planning for the softball fields. So I thought that was a little interesting. I also thought it interesting, and we touched on this in the letter that we sent about the dog park being a single purpose space. Well, they're also doing an urban garden kind of right next to the softball fields. And there's also, I think, an Eagle Scout installation for 9/11 remembrance. So kind of talking up these other specific uses of areas in the park, which seems to go against the idea that the softball field should be this open, unprogrammed space. But there wasn't any discussion really about it beyond that.
Right. Okay. I know that there is a request from that group to host the Cherry Blossom Festival somewhere on county land and possibly in Virginia Highlands Park and elsewhere. And I also know that they have repeatedly asked DPR to just not schedule the softball field for entire seasons. So on it goes. But anybody have any questions for Drew? Nope. All right. Oh, sorry. John has his hand up.
Yes, John.
So did they approve the white paper?
You know, they have posted it,
Okay.
but that wasn't just they just mentioned that it existed. They didn't talk about the resolution approving it. I believe it did get
Okay.
approved.
Thanks.
Mark, you had your hand up for a
I'll look at it.
second.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention regarding livability 22202, they did show a mock-up of Virginia Highlands without any athletic fields on it at the meeting, which I found really interesting, that they would do that. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I'm not sure what the point of it was, but it was definitely a shocker.
So, and I would say, I think that mock-up you're talking about, it looks like some changes to the softball or to the rectangular field. Maybe even removing artificial turf. That wasn't clear from that mock-up, but the diamonds, the diamonds are on the diamond fields, 2 of them, if we're talking about the same one.
Yeah, there just seemed to be a lot more green space than there is now, rather than athletic space. So it was interesting to see that.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Yeah, that's my recollection too. John, your hand is up still or again?
Still.
Okay. All right, Drew, we appreciate, as always, you continuing to track our friends over there on the Park and Rec side.
Sure.
David, do you want to do a field fund working group update? You probably don't know what's going on right now.
Well, I mean, the working group has finished its in-person meetings. The next step is a briefing to the user groups, which will happen in it's supposed to happen in the next month or two. And this is on a longer time horizon now because COVID pushed it back. And the recommendations coming out of this working group will be in the next budget cycle, not the one that we're currently in. So we're talking about getting in next fall. So it is moving. It's not moving in the same time frame as some of these other things.
So I know Pete has reached out. I saw a bunch of emails today to all those sports groups asking for meetings in the middle of March. David, we should talk about whether or not you want to participate in those. I think that would be really helpful.
Sure.
Because you're going to be the one continuing to update the sports commission. So I can ask Pete to forward you all of those appointments. I think he had maybe 5 different appointments or something. They were all in the afternoon on a work day. It's like 4 o'clock time frame. So I do think you should be, to the extent that you can be available, I think that would be a good thing for you to listen directly to what the groups are saying.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So that's it for member reports. Now we're going to turn to presentations and updates and back to DPR. So Megan, it looks like our first update is on Jenny Dean.
Yes. Jeremy, are you on?
Yes, I am. Get my camera here. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy Smith with the Parks Development Division, and just going to provide a brief update on the construction going on at Jenny Dean Park. And I was actually going to just first start off with a bit of a recap on the design, if everyone wants to see. And there's probably some new faces that weren't here when this was all going through. So I'll just give a brief overview of the design of phase 1 of what we're planning at this point. So basically, Jenny Dean Park, for the phase 1, we're putting everything back that is currently there, but reconfiguring a lot of things. We gained some space on the north side of the park, north of 27th Street, and doing so allows us to expand, but we're also then expanding away from 4 Mile Run, because the existing fields kind of sit down right in the floodplain of 4 Mile Run. They flood in the outfields a lot. So this is the current configuration that we're going with. Still has the 2 fields, an adult field and a youth field. We have 1 tennis court and 1 basketball court going in phase 1, a picnic shelter, a playground, restroom, along with some other, fancy plazas and stormwater management, some public art. This big white blob that you see in the middle is the WETA studio. The county did purchase that building already, but we are leasing it back to WETA for approximately 3 years. That gives them capital to start working on their studio over across the stream in Shirlington. Once that is open, the county will come in and take down this building and convert this back to park. When we do that, we will also convert this basketball court to a tennis court and then build a new basketball court. So the idea in phase 1 is trying to get all the same stuff there, but we are losing a tennis court temporarily until we can move the basketball court in phase 2 to this area and then go with the 2 tennis courts here. So that's just the overview of the design. Where we are right now is kind of sad. I hate looking at this picture, but this is what it takes to rebuild a park. So construction began for the most part in November of 2020. There was some light construction going on. Didn't look like a lot was going on, but there's a lot of things that take some time with utility disconnections, capping some utilities in the street and disconnecting power and working with Dominion and Verizon and things like that. In January, construction really got fully underway. You can see this is sort of where we are today. Basically, the first phase that goes in is you do your sediment and erosion control measures before you really start heavy demolition. That's to protect the streams. If a big storm comes, we don't want to have all this silt getting down to the stream. So we install our sediment and erosion control measures. But now we're really mostly done with that, and we're into the heavy demolition of all the park elements. The next few months are going to be it's going to look a lot worse before it starts to look better. So we're going to have a lot of demolition and then the site rough grading. And then we're on track to, we anticipate construction will be finished at the end of 2021. So right now we're looking in that December timeframe. That's always subject to change. You know, things happen in construction all the time, but right now we're on track for the end of 2021 to be finished and reopened. I do have some more ugly photos if you want to see of the construction that's going on today. Here's the old field, torn up. You know, a lot of the fencing and poles. The dugout will be coming down soon. Some of the trees coming down. The courts today.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a mess, but it'll be. I think it'll be worth it. And then this is again one of those sediment traps that we have. We have 4 of them on site that are there temporarily. The water from the different areas will come in and fill in here, allows the sediment to settle out before it eventually makes its way into the stream, but it cleans it before it gets into the stream. And that's about it. I can take any questions you might have if you want to go back and talk design or questions about things coming up.
Steve has a question, Jeremy. Steve
Sure.
Yeah, Jeremy, the WETA parking, is that available to the park?
So there's the short answer is no. So WETA has 2 parking lots here that are they're completely fenced off. They are closed access. You need to get in. This is where they have some of their VIPs coming in. There is a parking lot to the east of that where the old day laborer site would have been. That is getting expanded, so we're taking out the day labor shelter, gaining quite a few spaces in there. So that will be open to the park. Parking wise, so there also used to be a small parking lot sort of in this area that was open. That is coming out, but there's no net loss of parking in the area. We're gaining spaces sort of a number of ways. We have a few temporary drop-off spaces right here. The idea of that was, bring a van in, let your come out with your bags and your bats and stuff, and then go find parking elsewhere. The other big one that we're gaining a bunch of spaces is currently along South 4 Mile Run Drive. It was long-term parallel parking. So you got a lot of trucks and things that were there for the long haul. We've currently changed to 10 hours, so it gets a little bit more turnover. When the park opens, we're going to go to 4-hour parking there. And then the other big one is we're going to angled parking. So it won't be parallel parking. You won't be able to get large trucks and stuff anymore. This will just be, angled back in parking, and we gain, I think, 19 or so spaces along with these, and a few of the parallel spaces we'll get along Nelson Street. There's going to be no net loss of parking for the park. There is a temporary loss of parking while we're under construction with a lot of these things, but once the park opens, there'll be the same amount of parking there that was there before.
And Jeremy, when is the opening date going to be when all of phase 1 is done, or nothing will open until everything is done?
Yeah, just the way the construction works, we're not sort of moving one side to another or phasing. They've fenced off the whole area to secure it. They have trucks everywhere. It's sort of, concrete will get done at once, and there's concrete all over the site, the turf. But yeah, so when phase 1 is done, it'll open all together. We'll be able to do, whenever phase 2 starts, we'll be able to keep phase 1 open for the most part. Maybe temporarily, you'll probably have to close down the courts in order to restripe them, but it'll be a fairly quick conversion to add the new nets here. and restriped to get the tennis court open. But most of, phase 2 will be contained, and you'll be able to continue certainly using the ball fields.
Okay. Anybody have any
Any other?
more
Yeah,
questions for Jeremy? No question from George Thompson? Shocked.
I love that field.
I know you do.
No, it's great to see that it's moving forward, and we'll be really excited for many of the changes that are coming in there, and appreciate the DPR's continued push.
Steve's hand is up. Sorry, Jeremy. Go
ahead.
Jeremy, I got another one.
Sure.
The DPR plan, they'll be moving in Lover Run. So what are the plans with like parking there? And in fact, that entire building?
I can't speak to the parking at Lover Run. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, since DPR will be moving.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
So from the 3700 building that's over here.
Yeah.
Right, it's moving to Lumber Run. I do. Somebody else, I believe, is coming in here. I believe.
Well, AED is still there.
Yeah, AED is still there. Is somebody else going to be taking up?
I'm not sure about that, but
Right.
it's Steve, DPR is essentially like is sitting in space that a cultural affairs division manages. So it'll be up to them what happens to that building.
Okay, gotcha.
In terms of the short term, and then the whatever the long term plan is for the whole valley.
Okay. Well, Jeremy, it's lovely to see you.
Yes, same.
You know how fond I am of this project.
Yes.
So I hope to see phase 1 sometime before I die.
Definitely will.
Great. We appreciate you coming by.
All right, thank you.
All right. Take care. So next, Megan, we have the Reed School update.
Yes. Eileen, are you on?
Yep, here I am. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eileen Winquist. I'm with Environmental Services, our Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management. And I do have a few slides. I can push those up and then just give you a quick intro to the project and then take any questions. So let me go ahead and find this here. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. And I can't always see when the people raise hands and things, but yeah, if someone has a question,
Yeah, I'll
if you just
let you
want
know.
to let me know. Yeah, that'd be great. So, okay, so this project at the Reed School that we'll be I'll be talking about is a kind of in response to, you're probably all aware of a lot of the significant flooding that we've been experiencing in some parts of the county over the past couple of years. So there were some really devastating impacts to some of the residential and commercial areas. And in one of the locations, the Westover area where the Reed School is, but you can see here on the map, kind of highlights some of the watersheds that were more significantly impacted by this recent flooding. And so part of the challenge is, and as obviously this is similar with trying to find space for fields and things, is Arlington is very developed, very densely developed in a small county. And a lot of our stormwater management developed, was put in a long time ago as the county developed quickly. And so it wasn't necessarily as planned out as if it was today. So some of the stormwater management is just simply streams that were buried at the time. And so it's difficult for us to go in then later to try to upgrade the capacity of the pipes and things, because some of them are in people's yards and, backyards and side yards. And there's just not a lot of room to try to upgrade those. So what we've been doing in terms of trying to respond to this recent sort of increase in the severe flooding is really trying to expand our overall program, moving towards more of a flood resilience focus. And so we're expanding the types of projects that we do. And so one of the reasons why we are working on this project under the athletic fields is we're looking at expanding, the types of projects and also the location of projects. So not just trying to upgrade a pipe, in a certain location, but trying to add more types like the detention vault that we're looking at putting here, adding additional overland relief, which is what they refer to as just a pathway for water to flow when the storm system gets very full and reaches capacity. Is there a safe pathway for the water to flow to the stream without causing impacts to homes or businesses? And then also potentially adding other types of things like pumping stations or other types of projects that we have not really done in the past. So it's sort of a new effort to expand our program in that regard. And so you might be wondering why we were thinking of doing this at an athletic field, and then so that's kind of the focus there. So just a little site map you can see here. This is the school building, the playground and courts area, and then this blue area is the location where the detention vault is being proposed. And so this also shows you some of the other locations around there. And the playgrounds and the courts will be completed with the school project, and so will be available for students to use while they're in school. And there also will be some other locations like Parkhurst Park, and this old library site will be available there, while the vault is under construction, because the fields won't be immediately available. So the project is being planned in 2 phases, and obviously, one reason for that is that it's very important to not delay the completion of the school. So the project really came out of a lot of community interest following particularly the July 2019 storm. And so it's really been a community driven project. And because the school was already under construction, that was something that was, that enables us to kind of complete the project more efficiently, because we don't necessarily have to do a new procurement process, and we were able to use the existing contract and kind of just continue on and add the vault. So that's one kind of reasoning why. But we did not want to obviously, affect the schedule for the school. So that they've decided to break it into 2 phases. So this purple line you can see here is an existing 84-inch storm sewer pipe that runs under the school. And so what this vault would do, is take some of the water from this pipe, bring it over into the storm water vault, and basically detain it for a few hours, and then gradually release it back into the pipe. So it's really just taking some of that water offline and reducing the kind of demand on the storm sewer pipe, and holding it in the vault, and then slowly releasing it, so to prevent flooding kind of in the area when that overall system reaches capacity. So this red part, the parts that are outlined in red, were done as phase 1, and so those are actually being done as part of the school construction. And the reason why those were done initially is because they are underneath the playground area and the courts area, and we did not want to have to come in and dig up areas that were just recently completed. So those are being done first, and then the area underneath the fields would be the vault itself, which would be a concrete vault, and so that would be constructed following the school completion. So the school again is scheduled to be completed this summer, so they can start bringing in the furniture and doing the wiring and all that kind of work. And so then the contractor would be able to start on the vault itself. And so the design work on the vault is still underway. That's not all designed at this point, but it would be a large concrete vault. And this area over here is kind of a staging area that would not be part of the vault. So it would be sort of this main rectangular area there. So just a little more information about the vault itself. There actually was a small detention vault that was planned originally as part of the school design, and then with the interest in adding more, reducing flood risk and adding more stormwater detention, the size of the vault was increased dramatically. So it's proposed at about 540,000 cubic feet, which would hold about 85% of stormwater for a 10-year storm. And being able to do this larger vault at one location does help to prevent having to do several other kind of smaller, capacity improvement or detention vaults or storage areas at other locations. So that's one benefit is being able to do this one larger project versus other smaller projects that would take longer and potentially cause more disruption. And so I talked a little bit about this again. It was divided up into 2 phases. So the first phase will be completed with the school construction. The second phase under the athletic fields would probably start in the fall, again, kind of depending on when they can get, the design information finalized, and then also would need county board and school board approvals. So there's a process to go through there, and it will take approximately 9 to 12 months for the construction for the vault. And then the fields, will be completed on top of the vault following that time. So it's likely about a year delay in terms of the schedule for delivering the fields. So some of the issues that we've been, talking to the community about and hearing were obviously a lot of concerns about trees. And so with the vault project, there was not really a need to remove any additional trees. I know there was work done with the school project to keep the trees, protect a lot of the trees on the site. Obviously, I mentioned, we did not want to cause any delay with the school opening. So there is obviously the delay with the athletic fields. And so we do understand that is an inconvenience, for folks like yourself, for the field users. So that's partially why we wanted to come and talk to you about it tonight. For anyone who lives in that area, there will be, truck traffic. It's doing a big vault like this is a lot of mainly an excavation type project. So there'll be a lot of soil removed, and then they'll be bringing in the vault, the concrete pieces kind of in segments and attaching those together. So, but again, there is a lot of strong community interest and support, particularly in the neighborhoods surrounding the school and the Westover area. So, okay, and there is my contact information, which I'm sure you have as well. So I'll go ahead and turn that off, but then I can open it up to any questions, or if anybody wants to go back to a slide, let me know. I can pull that back up.
Steve, I'm going to take chair's prerogative and start off. So Eileen, could you talk a little bit? You did address that this is going to be at a year's delay to the field opening. I have a couple of questions. I know that this particular project obviously went over budget to begin with, and so I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about where the funding is coming from for the stormwater management piece, if that's a different budget. And then if you could also address, is there anything, in terms of is this a project? Sounds to me like the project is a done deal, but if there are any commentaries that you are looking for from our group that could, support. I personally support the project, even with a year-long delay. I know the devastation that's occurred for the businesses in Westover. They've been hit multiple times, and so if we can do anything to keep that from happening, I think that's a really good use of public funds. And so if our commission can do anything to support that, we'd be happy. I think I would be happy to do that if the commission were to go along.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, in terms of the funding, the stormwater program does have a dedicated fund, which is currently based on a real estate assessment. So it's, comes on your real estate bill. It's a part of that. And I believe that a lot of this funding for this is actually coming from some, basically a fund balance that we had, from prior years. But you're probably all aware that there was a bond in November. This was the first time that we have put a bond on the ballot for the stormwater program. And that was kind of acknowledging the need for some of these significant capacity improvement projects, trying to respond to some of the flooding. And one challenge, I think, with trying to expand our type of projects and move beyond, some of maybe more of the pipe replacement projects and things we had done before, is these detention vaults, you know, are more significant and more expensive to construct, but they will, you know, make a major impact in adding some of that capacity, you know, around the system. So we are at this time, I think, planning, you know, 2 potential projects, and so so I think right now this is not necessarily using the bond funding, but that bond funding is kind of coming in behind as well.
Okay. So Steve has his hand up.
Yeah. Hello, Eileen. Question for you on drainage of the athletic field.
Sure.
I mean, you're going to have this huge concrete structure right underneath the field now. Are there plans for constructing some sort of drainage that'll take all the water either into the vault or away from the field?
Yeah, there should be about 2 feet of, I think, soil on top of the vault. So it's, you know, there's going to be that layer. But I think Greg, actually, when I first had talked to him about speaking with you, your group, he did say, you know, that was something of a concern. So I do participate with the design meetings for the vault itself. So I can definitely bring that up. And, you know, I'm not aware of any particular drainage kind of built into the field itself. But I think with, you know, looking at the grading of the field, making sure that it's not, you know, so flat that you have sort of ponding in certain areas, or, you know, thinking about how they're going to grade it so that it maybe drains, you know, to one side. I can definitely raise that as a concern.
Yeah, I mean, we've learned in other respects that one of the big differences between a priority 1 field and a priority 2 field is under field drainage. So
Okay.
If there were any, I mean, I don't know what it would involve to add field drainage on top of the vault, but if there were any way to kind of incorporate that into the project, that would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely bring that up.
Justin, your hand is up.
Yeah, I assume these detention vaults accumulate silt and debris over time and thus need cleaning. Can the cleaning happen without disturbing the fields that are installed above?
I believe so. I know I think there is an access port where they come in and they just basically, you know, kind of vacuum out some of the material. So I can double check where, I'm not sure if they've, you know, located exactly where that's going to be. Although I imagine it might be sort of in the lower end of the vault, you know, kind of where you might get more of that, because the water drains out kind of by gravity flow. So maybe closer to the lower end. But yeah, I believe that, you know, they'll just have a port that they can go in. So I don't think they necessarily need to kind of spread out over a huge area. And I think they usually use like a vacuum truck to do that. So it would probably be near one of the, you know, the road, or, you know, kind of somewhere that they could bring that truck in. But I can double check on that and get back to you if that's useful.
That'd be
Thank
helpful. Eileen, I know there's a public session on the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you're looking for people to come and comment, or is that really just an info session?
Yeah, it's because there's a use permit for the school, and so they're doing a use permit amendment, basically, you know, because we're not necessarily changing anything about what was approved on the fields, but because there is a time delay in when they'll be completed. There is a use permit amendment that's required for that. And we actually are getting a use permit, I think, for the vault itself, even though it's underneath the fields. They did request, you know, that we do a use permit as well. So that meeting is kind of related to, you know, some of the outreach, you know, required for those use permits. But it will probably be actually maybe not even as much detail as we have here tonight, but just really kind of going over and making sure. I think they've invited, you know, we've talked to most of the civic associations and the PTA and, you know, a lot of the other groups separately, but I think it's just kind of providing one more opportunity for anyone to have, you know, questions or input.
And you didn't answer the question of whether a letter of support from the Sports Commission would be useful.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. No, that would be wonderful. Yeah, actually, yeah. Sorry, I didn't. I was focusing on. Sometimes you know, hear the first question you're focusing on. No, that would be very helpful, actually.
Would you need that? Is there a timing associated with that? Do you need it before the use permit hearing, or?
Not necessarily before the, March 2nd. I know that's soon.
Soon.
We are going to the board for the March meeting. And that is actually, I think, for the MOA between schools and the county. So we're not at the point of going for contract, the funding approval yet, because that'll be later, more like in the summer, or actually maybe not until September, but we are going in March for the MOA. So I don't know, again, I'm not sure what your lead time is for the letters, but.
So usually we like to have a draft letter at a meeting that we can discuss and vote on. And we wouldn't be able to do that until March, and our meetings are towards the end of the month. So the soonest we could do something would be, the month from now.
Okay.
If that timing is reasonable.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I mean, it would still be good to have, for the project overall, even when we go later on for the funding. So.
Okay. We also need to talk with my commissioners about whether or not they want to write such a letter. So.
Yes, no, I understand. Yeah. No, we would appreciate it.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions for Eileen? Well, Eileen, super appreciate you coming tonight to talk with us about that. Very interesting project.
Yeah.
Really excited to see something like that to sort of protect the businesses at Westover. I think that's really
yes. Yeah, we're very excited too, and so we do appreciate. I know again it is an inconvenience for the field users, so we appreciate your patience and support.
Sure. All right. Well, you're welcome to stay, but I'm sure you probably have better things to do than hang out at special meetings.
All right. Yes. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, folks. So what's next on the agenda is any representation update. So you'll recall that I asked you about a month ago, maybe, to reach out to your representation groups and ask them if they had any input into things that they would like us to think about this year. I myself have not done that outreach yet, so I certainly cannot criticize anybody who hasn't done that yet, but I wanted to kind of go around the room and see whether anybody has managed to do that outreach and has anything to share with us tonight. So if you've done some outreach, you can use the raise hand and tell us what you know. John, your hand is up.
Which John?
John Mingus.
So I reached out to the youth soccer part of my portfolio, which I had forgotten that the adult soccer was also included. Youth soccer is the tip. It's going to be the classic. If they're more, it's the fee increase or the potential user fee, the field fee, and also the continuing concerns about space. And they are alerted to Virginia Highlands, and then that's on their radar as well.
Okay.
That's about all I've done.
Okay. We appreciate you doing that. John Bacon.
I reached out to the bike and running communities and sort of stumbled into a hornet's nest.
Oh dear.
Well, I think you've actually talked to one of the people that I spoke with, Lisa from Pacers. And they're just concerned because they haven't been able to run races, and they're asking what it will take to get the county health people to allow them to have in-person racing. And the governor just, I think this week, said now you can have 1,000 people gather, and so they've actually, Pacers has, and also one of the other groups I spoke with was Northern Virginia Runners, and they're also making similar lobbying requests, and it sounds like it has to go through the health department, from what they were saying. They haven't had a lot of warm reaction to their efforts to get 5K racing back in Arlington, and it's starting to happen in Fairfax and Loudoun and stuff. So they just kind of, one of the things they said, I read their stuff and I said, well, you're going to have to put masks on people because, as you know, our kids have to wear them. to compete in high school, and their presentation involved masks except when you're competing. And I suggested you're going to have to wear masks for the races. So they're redoing their proposals, and but there's interest. I think Lisa wants to join the sports commission, so I've recruited a candidate for the commission. But it's, you know, it's a pandemic, and people want to get out, and, you know, they're saying people are out running, you know, on the bike trails in closer quarters than the way they want to run their races and stuff. So, you know, it's a process.
Okay, that's really interesting. Not something that I think we would have necessarily come across our radar screen if we hadn't gone out and asked the question.
Yeah.
So, so I'm gonna hold discussion of these different ideas until we've kind of gone through anybody who wants to contribute. But that feels like something that we could potentially look into. I'm not sure quite what, but that seems like one that we could definitely play around with a little bit.
Yeah.
Justin.
Yeah, I've heard back from most of the groups. The adult tennis folks aren't organized, so I haven't heard anything back from them. But the last time I'd reached out to them, there wasn't a whole lot coming out of that group either. So so be it. On the flip side, the pickleball people are on it, as might be expected. And anecdotally, it is fascinating. If you go by Walter Reed Center almost any time of the day or night until like 9 o'clock, you'll probably see several courts being used for pickleball. That place is being taken over and utilized quite thoroughly. It's sort of a central point for the local pickleball community. And it is quite fascinating. They do have other areas where they have activity, but this seems to be the hub at this stage, given the way things have set up. The good news with the pickleball folks is that they are understanding the value and the requirement, really, of multi-use facilities. The last time I talked to them, it was all about single use, can't have multiple lines, it's got to be just pickleball specific, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like they get it, that in Arlington these days, that just doesn't happen that often, which opens up their path to using facilities more broadly. It also means they have to share at times, and at least begrudgingly, I think they're okay with that. So that's kind of interesting to see that evolution, and it's good to hear. Tackle football, the guy there just basically says, yeah, it's been freaky times. They haven't done diddly, and they're not really expecting to get back until June, which is their normal time to resume operations, and they'll sort of see what the status quo is at that point. He's assuming they will have safety protocols in effect still, all that kind of thing. But I think they basically, turn off the lights, close the door, and went away for a while. Flag football, run by the county, has been doing very well. They had a very robust, or I guess they're still having a very robust winter season. And they're seeing, good numbers in terms of signups, very strong registrations. The same is true with Ultimate Frisbee. Interestingly, because they are playing almost exclusively locally instead of traveling to events, they were able to drop their fees. And in part because of that, they've seen record numbers signing up and participating as well. So the EULA folks are very optimistic about the near term. And they said they haven't had any issues with COVID overall. That's it.
Cool. That's a lot of outreach, Justin. Did you learn anything you hadn't already known, or talk to anybody that you were happy to meet?
The biggest change amongst all the groups was pickleball's change of stance on facilities.
Right.
When I had initially spoken to them, whenever it was a year or more ago, and I sort of preached the whole multi-use thing, there was a tremendous amount of pushback. That just was not going to happen in their world. So to see them change on that, I think just through practical experience, that's a huge plus.
That's good. I mean, I know that their location at TJ was also heavily used, and I imagine that they haven't had access to that with the community centers being closed.
Right.
So, okay, George.
Yeah, outreach to the one half of the baseball community, talk to the senior Babe Ruth folks and Babe Ruth. Predictably, it's all about field space and concerns. They're well aware of the Reed Field delay, and also with Jenny Dean being offline, and then of course concerns and uncertainty about what the high school schedule, how that may have an impact, particularly within the senior Babe Ruth community, whether or not that'll have an impact on the house ball, the rec league, and also with some of their travel programs. So definitely fields being in short supply. At the same time, certainly I haven't checked in with senior Babe Ruth on registrations, but I know Babe Ruth, ahead of where they were last year in terms of folks signing up. Extremely popular at the younger levels as well, given that Babe Ruth was offering a free T-ball for folks who wanted to play. So that has also had lots of popularity, and folks wanting to get their folks who are too young getting into that program, and even some who are a little bit older, they wanted to put bats in their hands and get them out there. So that's probably goodness, but they're certainly concerned about space, and that's a continuing issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about it. And then there are also some questions about what could be done regarding tournaments later on this summer, particularly in the travel program, and when and under what circumstances those might be allowed. So and I've had separate conversations with Pete Lusk about that. So so hopefully more to come on that.
Okay. Interesting, similar theme. A couple of folks interested in when they can, kind of go back to normal, and when they will be allowed to go back to normal. Thank you for doing that, George. Appreciate it. Steve.
So with youth girls softball, we're having really a successful season in terms of registrations. We are ahead of where we were last year this time. I guess just an indication. I think where all the youth athletics are right now, everybody's anxious to get back on the field and get outside. So I think the registration is kind of a reflection of that. I'll echo what George is saying. Everybody's concerned about fields, and the high school schedules, the way they have been pushed back is going to impact our house leagues more than they have in the past. We shall see. And with Jenny Dean being down, I know that hurts baseball, but we did get Madison Manor back up, and that's going to open up, so that'll help some. So that's really all I wanted to say about softball. I have reached out to field hockey as well, and I have not gotten back from Megan. She hadn't got back to me, and hopefully I'll have a report from her at next meeting. And so that's about it.
Okay. Great. So does anybody else have anything? Not seeing any more hands up. So let's see. The remaining groups that we need to do updates yet, Christy, swim and dive, myself, gymnastics, Sherry for skateboarding, fencing, riflery, Frank for indoor sports. That's a big bucket for you, Frank. There's some of our non-sport groups, so community drop-in and softball, social league, the college program, senior sports, and then underserved. So I will probably reach out to the folks who are responsible for those constituents after the meeting and just get some sense of whether you've tried or you're not sure where to start, so that we can continue this process. I think to me, this is really exciting, right? This is what I wanted to where I wanted to be when I proposed that we operate in this way. That we begin, a greater dialogue with people that are just not at the table. So I think it's really exciting, and I hope that those of you who managed to do the outreach found it to be valuable and informative. Can we kick off so in the context of the remaining half hour-ish, I'd like to kick off kind of a conversation about any ideas that this input provides to us in terms of forthcoming meetings and our annual plan. And I also want to share with you some perspective from the county board liaison as we think about the commission's plans and activities for the remainder of this year and in the near future. So I had a talk with Christian Dorsey, who is our new liaison, about maybe 2 weeks ago. And I met with him actually the day after I sent the Virginia Highlands letter. So he had just gotten the Virginia Highlands letter and read it. And I want to say probably when Christian was last our liaison, we were talking about Highlands then too. And so he started off the conversation by saying he was kind of sad to see that we were still in the same place fighting somewhat of the same battle. And, we talked a little bit about that situation. He shared with me the board's perspective on the situation, which I think we've all talked about, on other occasions. They were not very pleased, obviously, with what the neighbors had done down there at Virginia Highlands. But Christian's advice, and I suspect if even when he's able to come and spend some time with us, his advice and his desire for us is that we move out of a defensive posture. So I think from his perspective, I think he would like to see this group do more and get more involved in not defending spaces, even though we know that we feel like we have to do that all the time, but advocating for, more spaces, dare I say that? I don't want to put words in his mouth. Creative uses, thinking about unmet needs. So being much more sort of forward-looking and creative. He gave me an example of a use that he met somebody from another county who asked, "Hey, is your sports commission looking at this kind of use?" And Christian said, I had thought about that for a second, and I realized no, they're not, because they're spending all their time, defending the fields. So I think philosophically, it's a different perspective than our former liaison had. I think possibly from the vantage point of having been around longer, Christian has seen more than Matt had seen in terms of, county processes and the sports commission's role in general. And so I want to take that to heart, and I want to think about, we obviously can't solve it tonight, but I want to think about what are some things that we can start to do that are more forward-looking. He particularly mentioned wanting our help in thinking creatively about in the wake of the pandemic, leveraging outdoor spaces for fitness activities. So all of the activities that used to take place inside, how can we think creatively about how those activities could take place outside? So I don't have any, magic way of thinking about this. I'm really throwing it out for the group to kind of brainstorm in the remaining 20 minutes or so about the ideas that we've heard. Are there any themes there that we want to think about in terms of agenda items and things that we could be taking on? And then, also just generally some of the items that were in the annual plan that we had thought about wanting to have be topics we discussed. So I welcome you to raise your hand and start the conversation.
What if we recommend putting a third softball field at Virginia Highlands?
Okay, where's that going to go?
Any place where there's green space.
Okay.
No, seriously. I mean, if you're talking about pushing back, I mean, that's what we need to do. If before we got pushed into this corner by Parks for Everyone, I mean, we were looking into adding fields. Ever since they have sort of come along, all we've been is on the defensive. Christian's absolutely right about that. why do we always have to be on the defensive? I think the youth athletics especially represent a far greater percentage of the population than that group over there. Why are we on the defensive? That's a really good question we need to ask ourselves. I'm just kind of thinking philosophically that maybe we need to sort of resurrect some of the plans we've had for additional fields in Arlington County somewhere when there is green space that opens up. Thinking about putting another field in there instead of immediately gravitating to green space. That's all.
Good comment, good perspective. Justin, your hand is up.
I mean, obviously, if we can find places in Arlington where we can shoehorn some more fields, I'm all for it. Yeah, it takes space, it takes money, it takes time. I wonder if shorter term, it helps if we are a bit more aggressive or a lot more aggressive collectively and individually with each sports group in just telling the stories of the uses and the users, and maybe even some of the challenges they have with the existing allotments of space. Because we're all kind of in it. We all kind of know it or know it a lot. That's our reality. And so I think unconsciously we kind of project or assume that everyone else knows our worlds. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. So if some group wants to come along and say, well, no one ever uses the fields, they're not really needed, let's get rid of them. We have not put anything out there in an organized fashion to counter that position. And just trying to say, well, let's go get some more fields. We should do that as well. But I think we need to be telling our side of the story as aggressively as they are trying to tell theirs. And much like Steve said, we got a whole bunch more users, kids and adults, to throw out there and tell their stories, I think, than we have people on, Parks for All, 22202, livability, all that kind of stuff. And it will take a little bit of work to coordinate this stuff, but I think with a little bit of effort, we could put together some talking points or some topics that each of the sports groups could then run with and tell their own story their own way. But I think that would be a very effective thing we could do within this calendar year.
Mm-hmm. John?
So I really like that idea, and I'm going to toss in a data-related piece too, which is, they tried to make an equity argument about open green space. What if we tried to make tried to sort of put it on its, turn that and say, well, where are the fields? Do we need more? Is there a way we can talk about fields from that equity lens to say we need more fields, and ideally we need them in the following, in the following quarters, recognizing that we can't, the reality is those quarters aren't going to work just because of where the space is available, but at least begin to have that discussion. Sort of I like the stories, but I also like sort of data and thinking about sort of the data pieces related to that. And, much like they tried to, other groups try to spin the reservation data in ways that are not appropriate, are there ways that we can think about that reservation data in an appropriate way?
Mm-hmm. George?
Yeah, I was, keying off on Steve's comment about looking at areas for, where there may be space that is underutilized. And this is something that I've always found very curious over in Bluemont, which I know has its own set of issues whenever something is proposed. But there is an area, there is a field that I guess used to be a baseball field. There are a few on the and this is at the opposite end of the park from where the relatively new baseball diamond is located. But there might be some sort of amphitheater back there. But regardless, there's a field where I understand it. There used to be a baseball field or a diamond field there. and it's just sort of unused and it's unloved, and I don't even know if that space is actually used for anything. So I'm not suggesting it needs to be a diamond field, but it has always made me wonder, do we look hard enough at our facilities and determine are there fields that are, perhaps being way underutilized or viewed as being too far gone, that with some love and restoration could be brought back up and made part of an inventory, and done so in a multi-use way that defangs some of the arguments that have been used against the sports community for saying, well, you're only creating space, for one purpose or one sport only. So anyway, it's always been in the back of my mind that, gosh, there was a baseball field up there. That would be a really wonderful area if something were done for it. And I'm looking at it on a satellite map that it's by the Manchester Street and 4th Street over there, the parking lot between there and Washington and Old Dominion Trail. And from the satellite, it just looks like a bunch of fields that, and I can tell from the mowing strips on it, a large mower was used, and probably not very often because it's got a lot of streaks in it, which suggests that the grass was rather long when it was cut.
George, is this sort of the space at the south end of the sort of the far southern end of the park?
Yeah, that's correct.
Actually, I can tell you that space is actively used for little kid soccer games, fall and spring. They'll pack a bunch of teams into that, right around that parking lot.
That's great. Good to hear. Yeah, the one that is
by a picnic shelter.
Yeah, there's a picnic shelter over there. There's a picnic shelter in the woods, and then there is a field over there as well. So anyway, but notwithstanding, the question is, are we doing enough with the spaces that are out there? Or is there anything that is perhaps underloved that could be brought out so we can rekindle that conversation about, are we building for the future, or are we just sitting around defending what we have and trying to justify that? Because I think it's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm reminded that there were 2 county processes under JFAC that Jessica Pasca kind of watched for us. One was for the Buck property and one was for the Carlin Springs property. And both of those, the planning or brainstorming processes, I can't say planning processes, but kind of the, the visioning processes for both of those at some point included fields, and neither of them ended up with fields as a part of the final vision. Similar to the Marymount situation where, Marymount's willing to put money on the table to put a field in at the Old Dominion 26th Street, and that didn't see the light of day either. So there have been some opportunities where, I'm not quite sure whether it's because we were not, we weren't invited to be part of the process, or we were not sufficiently active in the process, or we were outgunned in the process, but some opportunities that could have resulted in additional field space that, I don't want to say the door is closed, but I think there's more than just 1 or 2 spots where if, maybe with some additional push, we could reopen some conversations.
Marymount will come around again, because I have it on good authority. I don't think it's come out publicly yet, but there has been a land sale up there that is rather significant, and may open up that conversation again. So just put that one back, on your radar.
Right.
I'm not sure at what point, but that's public knowledge.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the ever elusive, decking over 66 that we all talk about, and we all know that that's really expensive. So I guess I was interested too, though I don't want to just talk about fields, because I was also interested in thinking about, the various comments that were made relative to groups wanting to know, when can we get back out and have races? When can we get back out and play tackle football? When can we get back out and I don't know, like there were a couple of other comments that were in that realm, is, this is a delicate area for us to wade into because we're not health authorities, right? And so I know that we want those decisions to be made by people who do have that authority and that expertise. But, is there anything in that realm of inquiring or advocating that the group thinks would be worth pursuing? John?
It's maybe what we could do is bring some of the, some of the running people into to our meeting. So, I think what's going to happen is they're making a presentation to some people with the health department, and if they get okayed, then they're fine. We'll never hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
If their pitch fails, then they're going to be looking for support.
Right.
And, perhaps we could bring them in and they could make their pitch to us, and we could, I don't know, like you said, I mean, it's do we want to try and, veto the health department people's vision of what's cool? But, maybe we could have them tell us what they think is safe and why they think it's safe. And I don't know, maybe we could look at that.
Yeah. Good idea. Justin?
I would want to err on the side of advocating for safe operations. It's not up to us to decide what's appropriate or safe medically. I think we do have a lot of examples of the fact that a variety of sports can be enjoyed safely during a pandemic. And while in some of those cases, they're not like the 100% version of the sport, we have to be patient and okay with the fact that we're getting some of this stuff in. And when everyone's healthy and when it's safe to come back to it, we could get back to the full bore versions. I really don't think we should be advocating jumping the gun on anything, given where we're at right now, pandemic wise.
I mean, that's a fair point, but I am a little curious about, John, you said that other areas under the Virginia, return to normal guidelines are starting to do things. So why is Arlington different, I guess, is a question I have.
And perhaps not to judge, just to let them air their perspective.
Right.
I mean, they tell us how they think it should be done and how it's being done elsewhere. Again, example, I don't want to beat my own situation to death, but, in Arlington, we raced, our track team, we had to race in masks, and there's chunks of Virginia where they don't wear masks. So we couldn't go to the state championships because, the other teams don't wear masks. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Obviously I'm too emotionally tied to the whole thing to be objective, but, it's just Arlington has been very strict in terms of their rules. And so, if these people want to present their position, like I said, we can vote up or down, or we can not vote, just let them speak. But perhaps it would be fair to give them an opportunity to make their pitch.
Right. I mean, that certainly we could think about. There's some ideas here for a March agenda. I think there's also some longer term ideas that would take more time to develop, these notions about, kind of making a pitch for some field space, obviously, is a longer term project. We had also talked, and I know Greg Jimenez is here, who was also interested in bringing in the gymnastics folks to make a presentation, talk to us a little bit about where they are. We haven't heard from gymnastics in a while since Heather Kokoza was on the commission. And I thought it would be interesting to hear from them what's going on in their world. So maybe we can think about some presentations in March from some different perspectives than, the field activities have been going okay. By all accounts, baseball's being played, soccer's being played, ultimate, there's the field folks are doing okay, but other folks who maybe you're not participating as much, we need to hear from. So maybe there's some ideas there for a March agenda. So John, is your hand is not up. Okay. So anybody else have any thoughts or comments? All right. Well, I think there's more here to talk about. If I will invite you guys, as you think about some of these things, if you want to reach out to me with some suggestions about either approaches, because I will confess that there are limits to how creative I can be, or meeting topics. The group had expressed at one point in time being more involved in developing the agendas, so that that involves suggesting a meeting topic and letting Megan and I work to get that on the agenda. So please give some thought to these ideas, because I think as I said, I think I take from Christian. I think that's a great sort of tone setting message for us, that we need to move into a different direction. And so that's going to require some creativity from the group to figure out what that's going to look like. So, so with that, we don't have public comment on the agenda, Megan. We should have. That's a note to make. We usually have a space for public comment on the agenda. So I'll turn to our one guest, I believe, and ask if there's any comment that anyone in the public would like to make about tonight's meeting. Okay, I would like to thank Megan for a successful first meeting back with us. It's nice to have you back in our fold. We're not sure how happy you are about it, but we're happy to have you back.
It's great to work with you guys.
And I think that's a wrap, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good night. Good job,
Good night.
guys.
Good night, Shirley.
Good night.
Good night.